1984. A kid stands outside a shoe store in Chicago, staring through the glass like it's a museum exhibit. Inside, sitting under white fluorescent lights, is a pair of red and black sneakers. Not gold watches, not diamonds, not a Ferrari. Shoes. And somehow, everyone wanted them. Parents fought over them. Schools banned them. Kids got robbed for them. Because those shoes weren't really shoes anymore. They were proof. Proof you mattered. Proof you belonged. Proof you were becoming someone. And Nike understood something terrifying before almost everyone else did. People don't buy products. People buy identity. Quietly, almost invisibly, Nike stopped selling rubber and fabric and started selling status. That changed everything. Because once a company learns how to sell status, it no longer competes in business. It competes in psychology. And psychology is infinitely more profitable. The strange part? Nike wasn't supposed to win. In the 1970s, the company looked fragile, small, uncertain, almost temporary. Adidas owned prestige. Converse owned basketball. Puma had cultural relevance. Nike was just another running shoe company trying to survive. Its co-founder, Phil Knight, wasn't a visionary fashion icon. He was an accountant, a quiet, awkward businessman obsessed with distribution margins and Japanese manufacturing efficiency. Not culture, not emotion, not status. At first, but markets evolve, and eventually every successful company runs into the same brutal problem. Functional value dies. A shoe can only become so comfortable. A phone can only become so fast. A car can only become so efficient. Eventually, everyone catches up, and when products become similar, meaning becomes everything. That's where the trap begins. Because humans are deeply irrational creatures pretending to be logical. We say we buy things for quality. But history says otherwise. A Rolex doesn't tell time better than a cheap digital watch. A Ferrari doesn't obey speed limits differently. Luxury clothing doesn't protect you from weather better than ordinary fabric. But status. Status changes how people look at you. And more importantly, how you look at yourself. That is the real product. Nike discovered this slowly, almost accidentally. At first, they sold performance. Run faster. Train harder. Win races. Simple. But then they noticed something strange happening around sports itself. Athletes were becoming mythological figures. Television transformed games into modern gladiator arenas. Millions watched. Millions copied. Millions projected their insecurities onto athletes who looked superhuman. And in America, basketball was becoming religion. Not because of the sport itself, because basketball represented escape, especially in urban communities. A court was one of the few places where poverty temporarily disappeared. Talent could outrank background. Respect could be earned publicly. Style mattered. Movement mattered. Presence mattered. And Nike realized something enormous. The shoe was never the product. The athlete was the product. The shoe was merely the artifact connected to the mythology. Then came 1984, and everything changed. A rookie entered the NBA. Young, explosive, arrogant, magnetic. Michael Jordan. At the time, he preferred Adidas. That's the irony. The greatest marketing partnership in history almost never happened. Nike wasn't even Jordan's first choice. But Adidas was financially unstable. Converse already had legends like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. Nobody fully understood what Jordan would become. Except Nike. Or maybe more accurately, Nike understood what people needed Jordan to become. Not an athlete. A symbol. That distinction matters. Because symbols are immortal. And once Nike signed Jordan, they stopped marketing shoes traditionally. They built mythology. The Air Jordan wasn't presented like sports equipment. It was framed like rebellion. The NBA banned the original black and red colorway for violating uniform rules. Nike turned the punishment into narrative. Every fine became advertising. Suddenly the shoe wasn't just stylish. It was dangerous, forbidden, anti-establishment. And humans are psychologically addicted to forbidden things. Especially young people. Especially insecure young people trying to construct identity. The genius wasn't the sneaker. It was the emotional architecture around the sneaker. Nike made consumers feel that buying shoes was participation in greatness. Not ownership. Participation. That's a powerful psychological difference. Because ownership ends at the transaction. Participation becomes emotional dependency. And then something darker happened. The shoes became social currency. In schools across America, status hierarchies started forming around brands. Who had Jordans? Who didn't? Who mattered? Who was invisible? Teenagers weren't buying sneakers anymore. They were buying protection from social exclusion. That's why parents spent money they couldn't afford. That's why demand became emotional instead of rational. And emotional demand is nearly impossible to compete against. Because when someone questions the product, they accidentally question the person's identity. That's why status brands survive criticism so easily. Criticize someone's luxury watch, their designer bag, their expensive car, and watch how emotional the reaction becomes. Because status objects fuse with ego, Nike mastered this fusion. Quietly, relentlessly, and they kept evolving. By the 1990s, Nike advertisements barely showed products anymore. Instead, they showed emotion, sweat, pain, discipline, obsession. The commercials felt cinematic, spiritual almost, like mini philosophical films about human potential. And then came three words that completely rewired modern branding. Just do it. Not buy this. Not best quality. Not lowest price. Just do it. The slogan had almost nothing to do with shoes. That was intentional, because Nike no longer wanted to live inside sports. They wanted to live inside human ambition itself. The campaign targeted something universal, the silent guilt people carry about the lives they aren't living, the body they never built, the dream they postponed, the discipline they abandoned. Nike weaponized aspiration, and aspiration is one of the strongest emotional forces in capitalism. People don't buy products because of who they are. They buy products because of who they hope to become. That's the engine. Always. A gym membership, a luxury suit, a skincare routine, a sports car. Most purchases are not practical decisions. They are emotional negotiations with an imagined future self. Nike understood this better than almost any company on earth. But the system evolved again. Because status itself was changing. Old luxury used to whisper. Tailored suits, country clubs, expensive watches hidden under sleeves. But modern status became performative, visible, broadcasted, aggressively public. And sneakers became perfect for the internet age. Because sneakers are social signals you wear publicly every day. Not hidden in garages. Not locked in vaults. Displayed. That matters. Especially once social media arrived. Instagram transformed identity into constant performance. Everyone became their own brand manager. Every outfit became communication. Every photo became a ranking system. And Nike adapted perfectly. Limited drops. Scarcity. Collaborations. Hype culture. The product itself became secondary to exclusivity. Because scarcity creates perceived status. Humans instinctively value what other humans cannot easily access. That instinct is ancient. Luxury brands understand this. Nightclubs understand this. Universities understand this. Exclusivity manufactures desire. Nike industrialized it. A sneaker release started looking less like retail and more like a stock market event. People camping outside stores. Bots purchasing inventory in seconds. Resellers flipping shoes for thousands. And suddenly a sneaker wasn't apparel anymore. It was social capital, a tradable asset tied to cultural relevance. Think about how insane that is. A mass-produced object made in factories overseas. Acquired emotional power strong enough to trigger obsession, resale economies, even violence. Not because of utility, because of symbolism. That's the real economy now. The symbolic economy, where perception becomes more valuable than material reality. And Nike didn't create this system alone, but they mastered it earlier than almost everyone else. They realized modern consumers are not searching for products. They're searching for narratives. Stories that reduce insecurity. Stories that elevate identity. Stories that make ordinary people feel culturally connected to something larger than themselves. That's why Nike's advertising rarely feels like advertising. It feels like belief. And belief is dangerous. Because once a company becomes belief-based, logic stops matching. Look at how people defend brands online now. Like tribes. Like political parties. Like religions. Because the modern corporation no longer merely sells goods. It sells emotional belonging. And belonging is one of humanity's deepest addictions. The frightening part is how early Nike understood this transformation. Before social media, before influencers, before algorithmic culture, they predicted identity would become the primary battlefield of consumer capitalism. And they were right. Today, almost every major brand follows the same blueprint. Apple sells creativity. Tesla sells futurism. Rolex sells achievement. Supreme sells exclusivity. The product is only the delivery mechanism for emotional meaning. But Nike may have perfected the formula first, not by selling athletes, not by selling fashion, but by selling status disguised as self-improvement. That distinction is important, because overt status can create guilt, but self-improvement feels morally justified. Buying Jordans didn't feel shallow. It felt inspirational. That's psychological brilliance. Nike made aspiration socially acceptable consumption, and consumers rewarded them with billions. But there's another layer beneath all this. A darker layer. Because status systems only work if people feel incomplete. Think about it. If people genuinely felt secure, comfortable, fulfilled, status branding would collapse overnight. The entire machine depends on emotional dissatisfaction, on comparison, on inadequacy, on invisible social competition. And modern capitalism became extraordinarily efficient at manufacturing those emotions, not through force, through imagery, quietly, constantly, everywhere. A perfect body, a perfect lifestyle, a perfect identity, always slightly out of reach. Nike's campaigns were beautiful, but they also carried an unspoken message. You are not enough yet. Run harder, train harder, become more. And humans respond to that message because insecurity is deeply motivating. That's why ambition and anxiety often become indistinguishable in modern society. The line between inspiration and manipulation gets blurry, very blurry, especially when identity becomes monetized. And now the system is everywhere. Teenagers building personal brands before understanding themselves. Adults curating lifestyles online for strangers. People drowning financially trying to project success visually. The product no longer matters. The signal matters. That's the world Nike helped accelerate. A world where status became democratized, wearable, and endlessly marketable. But also, a world where self-worth became increasingly outsourced to external validation. And maybe that's the uncomfortable truth underneath this entire story. Nike didn't just sell shoes. They sold a feeling humans have chased for centuries. Significance. The feeling that you matter, that you belong, that you are admired, that you are becoming someone valuable. And maybe that's why the strategy became so powerful. Because beneath capitalism, beneath marketing, beneath branding, there's something painfully human. Most people are terrified of being invisible. Nike understood that fear, and they built an empire around it, one sneaker at a time. And maybe that's the uncomfortable truth underneath this entire story. Nike didn't just sell shoes. They sold a feeling humans have chased for centuries. Significance. The feeling that you matter, that you belong, that you are admired, that you are becoming someone valuable. And maybe that's why the strategy became so powerful. Because beneath capitalism, beneath marketing, beneath branding, there's something painfully human. Most people are terrified of being invisible. Nike understood that fear, and they built an empire around it, one sneaker at a time.